Hello rowers, Travis here, back for another workout. Gonna do something different today, looking forward to mixing it up from the steady state. So the plan is to do an anaerobic threshold workout today. So anaerobic threshold is something that you'll hear a lot spoken about with your training. It's not to be confused with your aerobic threshold being where your body can no longer filter out all the lactic acid that you're producing for the effort, and you start to have an accumulation of lactic acid in the system. Anaerobic threshold is defined a little bit differently. So essentially, once you do start training anaerobically, you're going to have this rate of buildup of lactic acid, and that rate is going to change depending on how fast you're going. So the faster you're going, the quicker you're going to build up lactic acid. Now, once you just start passing the aerobic threshold, you're going to have kind of a mostly linear kind of increase of lactic acid with your increasing effort. But at one point, you're going to have that curve kind of start to shift, and it's going to start to approach an asymptote where you're going to be getting closer and closer to what your maximum capacity for anaerobic work is going to be. And the closer you get to that point, the higher the rate that you get this exponential increase in your fatigue or lactic acid production. So if you look at that curve where it kind of starts out fairly linear and then it starts to go and turn to approach that asymptote, that point of turn, that inflection point, is your anaerobic threshold. All right, so we kind of, with this anaerobic threshold training, we find that kind of inflection point and we try to stay there because it gives us a chance to maximize the amount of time that we can spend training anaerobically, and therefore give the body a chance to adapt to that kind of effort. So anaerobic threshold has a bunch of other names. You can call it maximum lactate steady state. A lot of people just say AT for short, though AT could be confused with your aerobic threshold, so use that with caution. Zone 4 training and heart rate training is generally going to be your anaerobic threshold range. That might also incorporate your aerobic threshold as well. It's kind of a bigger range than I like to define with heart rates, but the amount of time that we spend in our anaerobic threshold is going to be fairly small. And so, like with your UT1 and your transport, which I talked about in other videos, your AT training is only going to make up about 6% of your training minutes in the general base building phase. And that's 6% of the minutes at UT2 pace and faster. And now as you get closer to the race phase, the competitive period, that is going to change, and it's actually going to change downward. All right, so it's actually going to go from 6 down to about, I think, 2 to 4. I can't remember offhand. I'll maybe put it in the notes if I can remember it, or I'll look it up when I'm done. But your transport work is going to be less of your volume in the base building phase, but then it will be more than your AT once you get closer to your competitive phase. So AT goes down a little bit, transport goes up. I'm pretty sure it goes down to 4% in the competitive phase, but I'll check my notes. It's either 4 or 2. So that's kind of the basic information about anaerobic threshold. I'm going to hop on today. The plan is to do 2 sets of 16 minutes, going 120 on, 40 seconds off. Stroke rates are going to be in the mid-20s, and so I'm going to stick around 24, 26 today. If I were doing my AT in a competitive phase, those stroke rates would go up a little bit closer to 28 to 30. But I like to use kind of lower stroke rates today because I really like this workout to develop a high power per stroke during my base building phase. And so I'm basically trying to produce a lot of power, and I'm kind of artificially suppressing that stroke rate a little bit so that I'm getting just more power per stroke. Drag factor is going to bump up from my normal. It's going to be about 110, 112 for me. I race at about 118. I do my steady state around an 80, 85, maybe a 75 on any given day, but that AT is going to be a lot closer to my race pace, and I might even bump up that drag factor during the first to second piece. So it might go to like 112 or 113 for the second piece. But that is the plan today. I'll set up, you guys can follow along, or if you want to just skip to the end to just listen to my debrief and listen to thoughts about it, you're welcome to do that too. Whatever helps you get the most out of these videos. So that's it. Thanks, and yeah, we'll cut back and we'll see you in a bit. All right, so warm-up's done. Not feeling like on top of the world, but also not feeling bad either. So pretty much middle of the road. Gonna hop in. I think I'm gonna go 2 sets of 14 minutes, minute 20 on, 40 seconds rest. Probably take about 6 to 8 minutes rest in between those 2 sets. Target split's gonna be about 151 at a 24 stroke rate. So that's the plan. Let's see how I feel moving through it.
All right, so one set done. Pretty happy with that, actually. It was just the right point of really challenging, but not unsustainable. So good place. Ended up setting 14 minutes, 120 on, 40 off, and stroke rate. Target was 24. It's kind of bouncing between 23, 25, mainly actually 24, 25. You know, my default was to kind of push at 25 and scoot down to like 148, 149. So I was really trying to relax at 24, 150 split, because I feel like that'll set me up well for the next piece. And then if I'm feeling good halfway through the next piece and I want to push a little more, I can do so. But a couple points in terms of how I approach this workout. The monitor is set up for a 14-minute interval. So it's not set up for a 1 minute and 20-second interval with a 40-second rest. All right, just rolling straight through. And I do that for simplicity, but also because unlike, say, a transport workout or race pieces, I'm not super concerned with what my exact split is here. I just want to kind of be in a range of split of that target split. And so, you know, when you set up as an interval, there's too much temptation to just kind of be pushing, trying to get a little bit better on each one, and I don't want that temptation. So another point is that the build to power is incredibly important for this workout. And so the build happens within the interval, so you're not building up the speed so that you're at speed at the beginning of the 120. The first second of the 120 is the first stroke of your build, and you should be at your target split and stroke rate within 3 strokes, all right? And you should not go over your target split as you're moving up, all right? You never wanna build beyond your target and then have to settle back down. So keep that in mind as you go through. I do wanna stay as active as I can through these rest periods, and so I'll cut that short, hop on the erg, do some active recovery, and then get in my second 14-minute interval. All right, so we're done. 4 minutes later, heart rate's down to about 120, so recovering pretty well. Really happy with that. It was just where I wanted. So the second set, I was hitting around 148, 149, again at that 24, 25. So, you know, that's kind of the plan. You know, if you approach that first one well and you're not overextending, if you're where you should be with your effort, then the next one should be faster just by virtue of being warmer and looser and your body kind of being primed for the effort. So if you're doing a workout like that and your second one is slower, then just kind of adjust your first one a little bit, or kind of the best yet, if it's only a little bit slower, then the next time you do the workout, take the splits from that second one and do those for your first one. And then on your second one, you can either match where you were on your previous first one or even push a little bit beyond that. But so yeah, so that was my AT. I will download these heart rates, throw them up in the computer, and do a little bit of review of that at the very end of this video, so you guys can follow along. I didn't look at my watch at all during that, so I'm curious too what it looks like. I would guess it's probably meant to high 170s early on, and maybe get into the low 180s, high 170s for the second piece. But we'll see. It may be a little higher than that. It's pretty hot out compared to where it has been, so it's up to 80 today and sunny, so I'm sweating like crazy. That'll definitely bump up that heart rate a little bit from what the baseline would be for this kind of workout. But as we talked about in my heart rate videos, that's expected, and that's why we're not letting the heart rate kind of dictate the effort of this exercise. So yeah, so that's what I've got. I will do a longer warm down. 20 minutes is ideal for any anaerobic session, so long as you have the fitness where that makes sense. I try to make sure that none of my anaerobic sessions in these early stages exceed the volume I would be doing if I was just sitting down and rowing. And so with 40 minutes, that kind of limits me. I did about 10 minutes for my warm-up, and then the 2x14 put me at 38, but only 3/5 of that was actually at pressure. So however much warm down that gives me to kind of stick within that 40-minute range is what I'll do today. I bumped the drag all the way down for that warm down, just to kind of help lower the load on the body. But the warm down's really good because it will keep the blood flowing to all of the muscles that I was using in the workout, and it'll help flush all that lactic acid byproduct out of the system. So minimum 10 minutes, no matter what, you're gonna get probably about 70% or so of that byproduct flushed out in that first 10 minutes, and then the other 20 minutes will get you up to about 90% or so of that waste product out of the system. And then you've got the next 24 hours or however long to your next workout to get rid of the rest. But that's it. So stick around if you want to look at the heart rate stuff and heart rate data with me. And yeah, otherwise I'll see you at the next vlog.
All right, and welcome back. So let's go over the heart rate data from today. All right, so we can see that kind of rough outline of the heart rates for the session. Warm up is happening here, a little bit of break there. A couple builds just to get the legs loose, and then diving into the intervals. So it was 2x14 minutes, 8 minutes of rest, minute 20 on at pressure, and 40 seconds light paddle. If you look down here in the bottom left, you'll see the heart rate as I kind of click through each interval. And starting with the first. So let's see what we got. So it looks like 153 peaking out for that first one, 158 for the next, 161, 164, 165, 168, and 169 for the last of the first set. Taking a break there, going into the second set, we have 163 to 168, approaching where we finished the last one, 171, exceeding where we finished the last one, and then building from there, 173, 174, 176, and 177 for the last one. All right, and so Looking at the pattern here, this is what I would expect. All right, so there's no anomalies or deviations that I should be concerned about in evaluating the efficacy of the training session. Second set, generally a little higher than the first. I was going a little bit faster on that set, which would justify that higher heart rate, plus the cardiac drift is going to take that heart rate up a little bit more on that second set as well. Also of note here, looking at kind of how these heart rates compare to the UT2 session that I showed you guys the other day. And so very similar heart rates, which going by kind of that conventional wisdom that gives clearly defined heart rates for each energy zone, this should not be the case. All right, so you can see in the background what polar kind of defines as my zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 based on my calculated max heart rate of 180, which is 220 minus my age of 38. And while these are in those higher intensity zones, they're also very similar to what I was doing on that steady state. So if we close this and pull up that steady state, heart rates are very much the same. All right, so something is amiss. All right, something is amiss based on what that conventional wisdom is telling us. All right, so my splits on this workout were around a 204, 205, 40 minutes at that pace, not including the warm-up, where I would have been slower, and then we can go here and we are getting very similar heart rates. All right, so I peaked out about 173 on that steady state workout. I peaked out at 178, 177 here on this workout. So a lot of overlap there, all right? And so what's important is the patterns, all right? And we can compare these from session to session. So the next time I do an anaerobic threshold session, I can compare these. If I'm producing the same amount of power at a lower heart rate, then I know I've made some positive adaptations, all right? If I'm producing a even faster power at the same or lower heart rate, which is what I would expect this early in the session, where improvements come at a much higher or much faster rate, then even better. All right, that's a great adaptation. Now I do want to take you back to my transport workout that I did 2 weeks ago, and we can look at the heart rates from that session. And that was 3 by 3 minute intervals. I was only about a week and a half, I believe, into my return to training, so pretty early. Didn't have a ton of endurance to be working with, but still got some quality time. I was hitting about 146 to 148 for my splits. First interval where I was 148, 166. Second interval 172. I believe I was about a 147 and a half on that one. And then the last one I was around 146 and hit a 178 heart rate. So just barely getting beyond what I saw in my anaerobic threshold work during my oxygen transport work, all right? And that is very indicative of the power of that cardiac drift, all right? And so this transport workout was a much shorter workout, all right? I had much less time rowing at a higher intensity than I did on my anaerobic threshold workout, where I was rowing 14 minutes per set. And granted, there was rest within the set. The volume kind of overrides that rest, all right? And so we're getting to see very similar heart rates. And so the final takeaway here being that there is significant overlap in your heart rates between energy zones, all right? So that UT2, I was hitting about 204, 205 pace. The transport work, I was hitting about 146, 147. For this anaerobic threshold work, I was hitting about 149 averaging. So even though very different splits, still seeing very similar heart rates, all right? So there's just more to it, all right? There's more to it than what the kind of books and magazines are trying to kind of lead you to believe, all right? So there is complexity. It is not an easy thing, but if you put in the time, you'll get good data out of it. So that's the session today. Thank you for following along. Again, I hope it helped. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content. Hit a like if this was helpful, and share with your friends if you think it can help them as well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you back in the next vlog.